What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today I want to take a look at one crucial decision that the New York Giants have to make this offseason. It's on Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, if you don't realize this, it's kind of hard to realize because time just flew by. Kayvon Thibodeaux is entering the final year of his contract in 2025. His 4-year deal, this will be the 4th season of his career. The first 3 seasons, well, we'll break those down and kind of discuss how well he has or hasn't performed over the last 3 seasons. But this is the last year on his deal, unless the Giants decide to pick up his 5th-year option, which is going to be the main topic of discussion in this episode. Now, if you don't know, the Giants have until May 1st to decide to pick up that 5th-year option. Once they make that decision, if they decide to pick up the 5th-year option, they will then tack on a $16 million fully guaranteed salary to Kayvon Thibodeaux's contract for the 2026 season. So they'll have him under contract for an extra year. However, at a premium price tag, that is non-negotiable. So it's a pretty crucial decision for the Giants, and based on the way Thibodeaux has played over the last 3 years, it's not necessarily a no-brainer for them either. So going to go ahead and dive into the pros and cons and pretty much all the ideas and thoughts that I have about the Giants potentially picking up this 5th-year option. And there's some reporting from the New York Post that indicates what the Giants are leaning towards doing. So I'll go ahead and break all that down. But before I do, guys, make sure you leave a like if you do enjoy these episodes. They really help the channel tremendously. Helps us get into the YouTube algorithm and all of that good stuff. And subscribe while you're at it. It's free. What's going to stop you from subscribing and tuning into our episodes? We have so much great content planned for this offseason, especially as we get closer to the Combine at the end of this month and then free agency next month. We have some really big plans that we can't wait to share with you all. So make sure you're subscribed. And now, going to go ahead and dive into Kayvon Thibodeaux. So this season, 2025, Kayvon Thibodeaux has a $9.97 million cap hit. It's the final year of his contract. If the Giants decline his 5th-year option, he would walk into 2026 as an unrestricted free agent. If they go ahead and they pick up the 5th-year option, though, they will have him under control for an extra season. This is why we always talk about when the Giants are looking to draft a quarterback, why they need to get one in the first round. Well, that 5th-year option is crucial. So again, the decision must be made by May 1st. If they do pick it up, Thibodeaux is guaranteed $16.1 million for the 2026 season. According to Paul Schwartz of the New York Post, the Giants are strongly leaning toward picking up his 5th-year option. So despite the fact that Thibodeaux only has 1 double-digit sack season, they are leaning towards picking up his option. And I kind of want to take a look at his stats and contextualize this, because as a rookie, he played in 14 games. He had 4 sacks. I think we all know that the stats were a little bit misleading for his rookie season and that he played better than the stats actually appeared. However, the opposite was true in 2023, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many. He had 11.5 sacks. However, he didn't really seem to be a player who was having the down-to-down consistency and really making his presence felt on a down-to-down basis for opposing offenses like you would expect from an 11.5 sack player. It's kind of like an 11.5 sacks from Kayvon Thibodeaux compared to an 11.5 sacks from Myles Garrett. You have to imagine the impact from Myles Garrett was much higher. His pressure rate was very low. I think he only had around 40-something pressures, which was the same that he had in 2022. The number was near identical in his rookie season and his second season, despite the fact that he played in 3 extra games and had 7.5 extra sacks. The number of pressures was nearly the same. So down-to-down pressure rate and pass rushing production hasn't been there for Thibodeaux. There's been some splash plays. He had that game-winning sack fumble against the Ravens as a rookie. But over the last 2 years in particular, those splash plays, those high impact and high potential moments haven't necessarily been all that present. So should the Giants pick up this 5th-year option? It sounds like they will. Sounds like that's what they're leaning towards doing. In my opinion, though, even though I kind of did just get pretty critical of Thibodeaux there for a second, I know a lot of you feel critical of him as well. So I don't think that I'm saying anything that's completely off base. I'm trying to pull up his more advanced stats as well so I can pull in some greater numbers. My thing with Thibodeaux is, if not him, then who? The New York Giants don't really have a lot of options at the edge rusher position outside of Thibodeaux and Brian Burns. Obviously, Brian Burns is under contract for the next several years. And he's one of the New York Giants' core foundational pieces. But if they don't have Thibodeaux alongside him, then they're going to have to find a new pass rusher to place on the edge. Azeez Ojulari is an unrestricted free agent this offseason. He could leave in free agency, and then the Giants pretty much just have Brian Burns long-term and Kayvon Thibodeaux entering the final year of his contract. So I think that the fifth-year option would give the Giants good flexibility and insurance long-term at the edge rusher position. And again, he's still young. He's still a young player who is ascending. He's definitely not scratched the surface of his potential. He just turned 24 years old in December. So he's got plenty of time to continue to grow and develop. Kayvon Thibodeau coming out of Oregon had immense potential, had crazy intangible traits. He was a really great pass rusher, and he actually was pretty solid against the run as well during his time at Oregon. We haven't seen all of these things take full shape at the NFL level, but it's not too late. He's only 24 years old. He's entering this fourth season. I think that there's still time for him to become a better player. And the problem is, if the New York Giants decline that fifth-year option, they're pretty much signaling that they don't anticipate that Thibodeau will become that better player. And they are pretty much running the risk of being wrong and getting burned because, listen, $16 million for a good pass rusher. If he ends up with another 10-plus sack season, if Kayvon Thibodeau goes for 15 sacks a season, that price tag for him is going to be well into the 20s. So you pretty much are protecting yourself. At the worst, in 2026, you're overpaying him a little bit. Okay, whatever. You're fine overpaying him. You don't have that many big contracts on your book anyways. So I think that it's okay to pick up that fifth-year option. And if I were the New York Giants, that's what I would do. And before I continue this discussion, I want to take a quick look over at BetUS, the sponsor of today's episode. I have a pretty interesting bet. It's kind of hard to figure out what to bet on right now if you don't follow a lot of NBA and you're waiting for football season, which just came to an end. But if you are looking ahead to the 2025 NFL draft, which you all know that I really love to look at, and I'm a big fan of the draft and I am following all the storylines, one interesting bet here on BetUS for the NFL draft. The first overall pick, they have Cam Ward at minus 150. He's got the best odds of being the number one pick. Makes sense. He's a quarterback. The Titans need one. Okay, that's fine. However, a lot of reports have indicated that the Titans are willing to trade down from number one overall and that they are considering going with a veteran quarterback in free agency and taking the best player available. We all know the infamous quote from their front office saying that they won't pass up a generational player. Well, I've been reading that the consensus number one player on most teams' draft boards right now is not Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter out of Penn State. And he's plus 175 here. So I know these are low probability bets, of course. The NFL draft is a crapshoot, and it's really difficult to predict who's going to go number one. But I think that right now, this is a good time to take advantage of plus 175 odds for Abdul Carter, because as we get closer to the draft, if we hear more buzz that the Titans are leaning BPA, he could end up being the one with the greatest odds, and he could be minus 110 by the time we're in April. So I like to lock in some of these bets early now, low cost. I don't throw a ton down just because, if you're right about this prediction, you could double your money up real quick and easy. So I'm going to go ahead and throw $10 down on Abdul Carter as the number one overall pick in the draft. I know that quarterback is usually the number one pick. However, in this rare instance, I could absolutely see it being the number one player in the draft class, which consensus says is Abdul Carter. So guys, make sure you go check out BetUS, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry, and make sure you use code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit match up to $2,000 on your first deposit. Back into Kayvon Thibodeau. I just want to quickly go over some of these more advanced stats before we wrap this thing up and talk about his pressures. In 2024, he only had 38 total pressures. That's a very low number considering he was on the field for almost 600 snaps. However, it's a better number relative to the amount of snaps that he played than what he put out in 2023, 43 total pressures across 981 snaps. One area of concern for me with Thibodeau is his health. Even in the season where he was healthy in 2023, he played all 17 games. He still didn't even log 1,000 snaps defensively. He's not necessarily an every down player, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he does play through injuries and he does get banged up quite a little bit. But in 2024, again, dealing with some injuries, he missed a lot of tackles this past season. That's something that we probably don't talk about enough. He had 8 missed tackles, a 27.6 missed tackle rate, which is like astronomically high for a pass rusher / outside linebacker. He dropped a lot less this season, which I think is something that we were all hoping for. He only had 7 coverage snaps this past season compared to 84 the season prior. I know last offseason we kept saying, please stop dropping Kayvon Thibodeau back in coverage. What is Wink Martindale doing? Well, Shane Bowen heard our complaints, I guess, and he actually listened to that and put him back in coverage far less this season. Now, another thing with Kayvon Thibodeau, again, looking at these pressures, he only had a few 5 pressure games, and 5 pressures is like a really good number. That's how you know you're being a disruptive pass rusher. He had 5 pressures against Dallas, against Seattle, and against Indianapolis and Philadelphia to close out the year. So you had 4 5 pressure games. 5 pressures, again, is that good number where you know that a pass rusher is actually impacting the game. And a lot of his games were 1, 2, maybe 3 pressure games this past season. And he wasn't finishing the year with a lot of sacks prior to the final 2 games of the season when he logged a couple of extra sacks versus the Colts. He had 1, and he had 1.5 versus Philadelphia. Had he not had those sacks, I mean, he would have finished the year with 3 total on the campaign. Not necessarily what you want to see from a top 5 overall pick from 2022. Again, even though he's a top 5 pick who's clearly not lived up to the hype and the expectations that were set out for him, I still think taking that 5th-year option and accepting it is the best course of action for the New York Giants, just because the potential is there for him to be a lot better. And a lot of this is predicated on the fact that the New York Giants, they just don't have a lot of salary cap space tied up to anybody, right? They didn't pay Saquon, they didn't pay McKinney, so they don't have long-term contracts on their books. In fact, if I go over the cap here, I'm going to take a look. In 2026, the Giants are projected to have $140 million in salary cap space. They can easily fit $16 million for Kayvon Thibodeau under that salary cap, especially considering they can make restructurings to a lot of these deals. This is when that Daniel Jones contract is nearly completely wiped off the books, is in 2026. They have more than enough money in 2026. You might as well go ahead and pay Thibodeau. And the last thing that I will mention, since I just brought up the Daniel Jones contract, the Giants declined Daniel Jones' 5th-year option. And that was smart, okay? Like that, I can't criticize them for that. He had not proved himself at that point in his career. He had not earned the 5th-year option being accepted on his contract. However, in retrospect, the Giants probably wish they picked up that 5th-year option. That offseason that they signed Daniel Jones to that contract, had they had the 5th-year option on his deal accepted, they wouldn't have had to negotiate in 2023. Coming off of that big playoff run, a lot of success in that season. He won a playoff game. The Giants were like, okay, now we feel like we need to retain him. Had they picked up that 5th-year option, they wouldn't have had to make those negotiations. They wouldn't have had to worry about franchise tag or $160 million contract. They just would have had him on the 5th-year option. And that's where the New York Giants are going to want to be in 2026 with Kayvon Thibodeau. They don't want him to potentially have a breakout 2025 campaign. They don't have him on that 5th-year option, and now they need to decide, do we franchise tag him or do we pay him over $100 million because he just had a big 2025 season? So that's the reason why I think the New York Giants should and will pick up the 5th-year option on Thibodeau's contract. I think they're going to try and learn from their mistake with Daniel Jones. Again, I can't really fault them with that. Jones hadn't proven that he was worthy of having his option picked up. However, in retrospect, in hindsight, because he had the potential of breaking out and earning a bigger contract, the Giants probably should have picked up that option, and that's going to be the mindset that they should take with Kayvon Thibodeau. Pick up that 5th-year option just in case he breaks out, and then you're on the hook for a lot more than just $16 million for one season. You're on the hook for 20-something plus for several seasons. So I rest my case there. That's what I think the New York Giants should and will do this offseason. I think they are going to pick up the 5th-year option on Kayvon Thibodeau's contract, and I think that's the smart move. It's going to be a lot of money, and no, he hasn't necessarily completely earned it. He only has, let's see, how many exact? He has 21 sacks to his name across 3 seasons in his career. He's not tremendous. He's not an elite pass rusher like the Giants wanted him to be. However, he is a good player, and the Giants need to retain good players. They can't keep letting good players walk out of the door. So I'm all for picking up the 5th-year option in this contract. Make sure that the Giants give themselves some insurance for the future. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comment section. Make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple, Spotify, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Go and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.